Welcome back, Fungi-Philes. Today, we're going to be unboxing the All American Electric Sterilizer that I got, and we'll also be doing a lab tour, showing you guys the low budget options that I use, and things that you could add to your space as well. Let's go ahead and start by unboxing that pressure cooker and getting it in here. Alrighty, so here we have our All American Electric Sterilizer. This is going to be a 25 quart. Let's go ahead and get this open though, and see how we like it. Beautiful. And there we have it. Look at that. Make sure there's nothing else in here. We're good. Check it out. 25 quart All American pressure sterilizer. Really excited to have this. Let's take a peek at this. Nice. One overpressure plug. Should be our little spacer. We have our inner bucket, our lifter rack, and our heating element down here. It all looks very nice. Beautiful. A lot of noises going on right now, so I do apologize about that. We're just trying to get this all figured out. Real nice though. We got to move this into the lab though and replace the Instant Pot and get this onto the counter and run some stuff through it. So I'm really excited about that. We can now ensure that we're hitting 15 psi for 3 hours and ensure that everything is dead. That's going to be fantastic for cleaning up nasty old contaminated jars or just old spawner liquid culture that I need to clean up before I compost it. So this will be a fantastic addition to the workspace. Let's go ahead and get this added in. Alright, now let's get the Instant Pot out of here and get the All American Sterilizer in its place. Look at that. Perfect fit. Beautiful. I'm not going to remove the Instant Pot off here because I have another project in here that is cooling down that I need to get to, so it's going to sit there and wait. But we picked up some distilled water, and we need to run a cycle through this. So let's get it set up. I'm going to take a second and read through the instruction manual. Super important that I take my time, take care of this thing. It's a nice piece of equipment. I want to keep it that way. So we have our distilled water. We're going to read through the guide real quick and just make sure that we're following all procedures and operations correctly. We're just following the goddamn instructions. Alright. Metal to metal seal is lubricated. Now we need to fill the bottom with our distilled water. It says to the operating line, I've seen a few different people use different amounts of water. I think the bare minimum is a gallon. I think that mark is a 2-gallon line, so anywhere between that. I got a gallon of distilled water right here, though. Oops. All right, and there we have a gallon of distilled water in there. And now we need to get our bucket loaded, which I think for this first run, I'm just going to clean a lot of old stuff that I have. I have a bunch of old contaminated jars and stuff. So let me take this out there real quick, get some loaded up, and we'll get everything else loaded up that I have sitting around here. Let's get those cleaned up. Got that first layer done. Let me show you what that looks like. Bunch of liquid culture and grain jars, contaminated or old. They should be sterilized. Throw that guy on there. Can we fit 2 layers? It looks like we can fit 2 layers. I hope anyway, we'll see. I forgot to check, but I need to make sure that none of these jars are fully sealed so they don't turn into a yeah, I've got to make sure that these either have a filter patch on them or that the lids are loosened slightly. Now that we have everything loaded up, we have our water in there. We're going to feed the little pressure relief tube down this little slot in the inner bucket and get this locked up real quick. Unfortunately, the jars are too tall to run high like this, so we can't stack them. I'm going to fit a few of these solid jars just up top on their side. Alright. Alright, there's those first two finger tight. We're going to switch to the opposite sides. Alright, now we have all of our wing nuts tightened. Alright, that looks better. I had to tighten these oppositely just to make sure that this gap is pretty much even all the way around, to make sure this is a metal to metal gasket, so we just have to make sure that it seals evenly. It does say in the instruction manual to apply a little bit of grease or Vaseline to the metal to metal bevel that's here. However, it was already applied from the factory, so I think I'm good there. We have our water, we have our contents in the sterilizer bucket, we have the pressure relief tube fed down the vent hole, and I think now we're good to turn it on and crank it up to 3. We have our vent in the release position. We're going to let this heat up now, wait for it to start steaming, and let it vent for 5 minutes. After it's vented for 5 minutes, we'll close the valve. We're going to let the pressure build up to 15 psi. Once we're in the green zone, it does say to open the control valve a second time and vent the chamber for an additional 3 to 5 minutes. It says that this is the number one reason for failed sterilization, is that there's still dry air that gets trapped inside of here. So let it start steaming once the water's come to heat. Let it steam out for 5 minutes. Seal it. Let the pressure build to 15 to 17 psi in the green sterilization zone. Let that sit there for 5 minutes. And then close the valve once again and let the pressure go up to 15 psi. At that point, we can complete our sterilization cycle. Now, we've started steaming out the peacock, so we're going to let that vent for about 5 minutes before we close it up and let the pressure build. Now, with this vented for about 5 minutes, we're just going to seal the peacock and let that build pressure up until it hits about 15 to 17 psi. Vent it for another 5, and then we're good to complete the sterilization cycle. I forgot to show this part, but all I did was put this the peacock, the vent valve, all the way up to the up position for about 5 minutes and let the pressure drop down, and now it's building back up, and we'll complete the sterilization cycle. Alright, now that the pressure cooker has run for its 2-hour course, we're just going to go ahead and turn it down and off. Let the pressure naturally release over these next 20 minutes, and once it hits 0, we can go ahead and release the peacock to let any remaining pressure out, undo one of the furthest bolts away from me, and get those nasty old jars and everything cleaned out and ready to be reused. Now that the pressure cycle is complete, we can go ahead and empty the contents of all these jars, get them washed out, and prepare them for our next use. We've already made sure that everything is vented. This has been cooled for like 16 hours. And I emptied out all the jars outside into the compost pile, washed them, and they're empty now and loaded up in here. And I'm just going to run them a second time, just in case I use them for storage, something that's not necessarily going to be sterilized right away. But you need to check the water level down there. Going to need to add just a tad of water. Now we can load this up with the vent tube on the right side. Feed our pressure tube down there. And let's start tightening. Now we'll just turn it on again, up to 3. Let it steam, and we'll repeat the same process. Everything will be good there. Now, instead of doing the 2-part cycle, what we did was just let it steam out for about 10 to 20 minutes once it originally started steaming, and then let it build pressure. We did not relieve the pressure a second time and re-steam it. Now that everything's been cooled though overnight, we can go ahead and empty it all out, get the jars back on the shelf, empty the contents of the other stuff that was being cleaned, and move on. Now that we've got the pressure cooker all done, let's go ahead and take a peek at the rest of the lab.
Welcome to the dark side. My big bag of oats has been sitting around for too long, and it got fucking weevils. So I've spread some diatomaceous earth in here. I'm gonna mix that around, and hopefully that helps fix this problem. Anyway, now that that's mixed in there, it's essentially microscopic, like razor edges of it's diatoms that have been ground up, so it cuts up the exoskeleton of all those fucking weevils and will dry them out.
Now this corner of the room is going to be where most of the magic happens. We have our sterilizer and our Instant Pot, we have our flow hood, and we have our stir plate. Anytime I'm doing any kind of culturing work, grain work, most of the time I'm doing it right here in front of this flow hood. This makes my workflow convenient, as I can offload everything straight in front of the flow hood and work on it from there, or let it cool down here as well. Underneath, I store my extra syringes and other liquid culture supplies. I also have this little shelf over here where I keep some research papers, and as well just other liquid culture supplies. Taking a peek at the flow hood itself, this is a unit which I've recently upgraded to. I got this off Amazon, I think, for maybe $350, $300, something around there. This is definitely not needed. If you're just getting started, I highly suggest taking a look at the Gordo-Tech DIY flow hood unit. My father built this for me about a year ago now, and it's done its job extremely well. I believe this unit, you can build these for less than $100, and they're really simple to make. I used that for quite a while with really good results, and occasionally I still do use that if I have an additional project that I need to let dry out in clean air. But as I've started doing more work in the lab and needing more clean space to work with, upgrading to a 2x2 unit just kind of seemed like the next step. And recently we've also upgraded from the Instant Pot to an All American pressure cooker. For a while now I've been using an Instant Pot just fine. Usually you're upping your pressure cycle times by about 1.5 times. I've used it plenty of times, I still use it quite occasionally. However, having this All American pressure cooker lets me know that I'm hitting 15 psi and achieving proper sterilization, which as we scale up is super important. And then over here to the side we of course have our substrate buckets, and we have a culture storage fridge right in the back. I'm actually replacing this with a different fridge unit, so I'm excited. This was actually an ice maker that I converted. And moving on over here, you may recognize the old liquid culture and grain storage container. I'm working on kind of getting a bigger space for all of this, as I'm going to need another one. However, these just kind of rest over in the side of the room. And now over here, you'll see that we have our culture storage. These are our active petries, anything that we're currently either isolating or working on breeding wise. This is going to be some of that reishi that you've seen before, subcultured out a few times. But we've got a nice little space to keep those all isolated. And these little 3D printed Petri racks, originally for I think 60 millimeter or 90 millimeter plates, I've since gone to I think 30s. Now over here we have the incubation chamber, which I use for incubating silicone bags or any of the other projects I'm working on. Grain or liquid culture that's incubating obviously goes into the other section. And up here would be, I guess, the closest thing you could consider it would be like the dream tubs that maybe you could find on Shroomery. This was originally the dub tubs that I built that I then converted. This is just a standard humidifier that I have JB welded this PVC adapter onto, which fits in this like corrugated tube, and it just kind of snaps in. So whenever I need to refill this water reservoir here, conveniently, I can just pop this out, and it also snaps right back in to that fitting. And this just leads directly over into the tub. In the back left corner, you'll notice that there's a like deconstructed fan, which is the battery's been removed, and it's been wired to just run off 5-volt USB, and that's hardwired to a timer, an outlet timer. I have two of those. One that cycles my humidifier every, like, it's half an hour on, every about 3 to 4 hours, 6 times a day, I think. And the fan timer only runs half an hour 4 times a day, or 4 times every 24 hours. So this fan is exhaust, so it pulls the air, sucks it out of the chamber, and the humidity just drops down on this other side. It works really well. I think I have some videos maybe I can throw up real quick, just kind of showing it working. But it's been working really well. I need to upgrade the growing area. Really, that's my biggest constraint right now, is just I have too many bags that I'll have incubating at once, and just moving everything or cycling everything to fruiting correctly is just kind of the bottleneck right now. So I think I'm going to be looking at a tent setup or something like that. But conveniently for the smaller grows that I'm doing, these little tubs are really nice. I can keep it isolated and everything's pretty automatic. I just kind of keep an eye on the grows themselves. And we just kind of have a shelf of extra supplies over here. Other stuff, we have some doggy pads for some of the low maintenance techs that I use. Check out Dr. Ed's videos on those. It's called Diaper Tech, Piddle Pad Tech, whatever. It works good with some species that don't require a lot of FAE, but those doggy pads are made of what's called SAPs, or super absorbent polymers, I think. They retain a lot of moisture and will slowly release that. So you can buy there's a specific name for the one that's commonly used. I can't remember the name right offhand. Be like Orbeez. Orbeez is another tech that I've seen used. You can use these SAPs, absorb a lot of water, and they can work for some things. A lot of more gourmets, though, require more fresh air exchange. I really do like this little fruiting chamber, though. Although I can't fruit too much at once, I think I can fit like a max of 6 bags in there. It works well for the small fruit projects, which is great for anything genetics breeding that I'm working on, as I can just work on getting a grow or two, collecting the spores, and moving on. So that concludes this little corner, though. And then finally over here in this corner, we just kind of keep extra storage. I keep all my extra glass jars. My LME stays ziplocked and usually inside of a Tupperware container like this. Some more extra supplies. And another thing I forgot to mention is reusing glass jars. Anytime in the kitchen I get left over with a glass jar, I boil it in some hot water and make some DIY goo with 2 parts baking soda, 1 part oil. You can scrub off the label and give them a go to wash, and they'll be good for mycology use. Another really honestly important piece of equipment, which is arguable whether it's actually important or not, but is this steel table, and it's something that I've really enjoyed adding into my workflow, into my workspace to help keep it clean. I used to work on my countertop, I used to work on my coffee table, I've done it everywhere. You don't need anything like this, but check around. I've won this at auction for $70. There's a local auction warehouse that, there's a lot of restaurants and stuff that close down, and all of their equipment goes to these huge auction houses and is sold for, I mean, cheap. But check around. Be frugal. There's tons of places, people selling things that you could reuse. Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist maybe. But figure out what you can do. Check the thrift store even for like pressure canners, old school pressure canners, instant pots. This instant pot I bought brand new for like 90 or $100, and it's done me solid. I've only used it for mycology, and I've probably given it hell compared to what it should be. I mean, it's run a lot, and for long periods of time, because we have to up the time by about 1.5 times what would be standard. When I'm doing substrate in here, I run it for four hours. Sometimes I'll do a double cycle back to back. I mean, this is a really good beginner piece of equipment, and if you can find one for $40 or even cheaper, maybe used, like, go for it. Get the fundamentals, understand it. These pressure cookers, most of them cap out between 11 and like 12.5 psi max, so you're not going to achieve perfect sterilization ever. There's ways that you can avoid using this. Like if you're working with brown rice per se, it's a very clean grain to work with. But even just like I've said, upping the sterilization times helps combat that, because it's time and heat that kills them. Under pressure, we can achieve a higher heat in a shorter amount of time. 15 to 17 psi is ideal, and that's where we really want to be. But again, for beginning and understanding the fundamentals and maybe just dipping your toes in without spending a bunch of money, you may already have an Instant Pot at home and you can definitely use it. I would suggest, however, though, if you plan on getting into mycology and using it a lot, get an independent Instant Pot just for this. That covers most of the equipment though. I would say like all in all, I've spent, if you don't include the new sterilizer and the flow hood, everything else that I spent was under a few $100 max. It was mostly built myself, found, used, thrift stored, whatever. It was just stuff that I found and made work. Only recently, now that I've understood the fundamentals and I'm starting to grow and expand, it's worth it for me to go get the bigger equipment, the stuff that's worth my money now. And that's also because I really do enjoy this and it's something I want to continue growing with. So making these equipment purchases is an investment, both in myself and the hobby. So they also pay off in time. So you don't need to jump all in is what I'm saying though. Figure it out. Just label. If you need Scotch tape and a Sharpie, anything, keep yourself organized and understand what you're doing so you can understand where in your process you're making mistakes and fix those on future attempts. And that pretty much does show off most of the lab space. So one of the things that I'm focusing on trying to streamline before I scale up is figuring out the sustainable techniques that work with me. I really do want to work on expanding a repertoire of videos and guides and my experience in mycology and learning how to do these things myself. There's constantly room for error and always things you are going to make mistakes on, but it's really important to learn from those, as otherwise what are you making them for? So when you get contamination, understand where in your process it went wrong and what you can do differently. There was many months that I worked with just even open air, but I used an SAB or a still air box for a lot of my work. You can make them. I have my old one right here. I just heat it up like a coffee tin on the stove. Bam, you got 2 armholes, and I have a little camera hole up top because I used to record on this thing. I really do think that it's important that if you're getting into this to think outside the box and figure out low cost or DIY solutions for a lot of this, and figure out what you like so you know moving forward and when you do want to invest in equipment, what's going to be worth your money. I know this video was kind of everywhere. It was recorded in a bunch of different days and I've just kind of been rambling on a bit, but I do appreciate you sticking around and I hope that you learned something valuable from this. At the very least, maybe was just entertained and got to see a little bit more in my operation. Thank you very much for joining, however, and I really do appreciate you sticking around. If you have any questions or comments, please be sure to leave those down below. And until next time, thank you for joining.